Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycle Works, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing the knowledge from experienced bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, and this is the last in our 6-part series on the 6 modern bike fit mistakes. We have been discussing all kinds of topics, from thinking about putting humans first to using pros as the benchmark for emulation, geometry, thinking about your goals and ambitions and the reality of actually achieving that. And this week, we are going to talk about more opportunities. And I think an opportunity that many riders are missing, and I think most people realise that it needs to be done, but maybe it doesn't come naturally to cyclists since we are more leg-based athletes. But we are going to talk about upper body strength this week. And maybe this could be the limiting factor for your endurance ambitions and rides, particularly if you are doing longer and longer events, such as ultra distance or Ironman, but also sprint events too. It's just a different kind of upper body strength that is required, I think. So yeah, we thought we'd discuss this topic.
I think it's just, it's a general mistake, but in a modern context. I think that's kind of the underlying theme with all this stuff, isn't it? It's, none of this is new, but it gets contextualised by the times that we live in.
Yeah. Again, it's like so much of what we've talked about before, about kind of increasing ambitions, increasing goals, and want to be on top of the Strava board. The
mismanaged expectations.
Yeah. The need to go longer and longer to achieve different, to just our modern lifestyles, I guess, of being more sedentary, more desk-based.
The relentless search for validation.
All that kind of stuff. That all plays into all of this.
The need to achieve.
Yeah, well, it's comparison culture as well, so we talked about this. The age of the internet has brought comparison culture to a peak. And it's hard to not be inspired by what other people are doing, but also maybe take that a stage further and kind of, see that as, a place of emulation and want and need to be compared to that image.
But this is where we come in with the trident that is logic and reason, bringing it back down to earth.
That wouldn't be a trident, would it?
Well,
2 prongs.
Maybe we're the trident. There's 3 of us here today. So
Logic, reason, and bike fit.
Oh, there you go. So let's talk about upper body strength. Why do we need it within our cycling? And maybe also we need to define upper body, maybe say versus like core. Because a lot of people tend to come in the studio and say, I need to work on my core. I've got poor core strength, or I know I need to work on my core, but is that different to kind of upper body? Like, what would you guys define core and upper body as?
Well, the first thing to unpack with that is that people know that they've got an area to work on already. So why aren't you doing it? That'd be the first thing I would take from what you've just said.
Well, it's difficult. That's why people don't do stuff, because it's difficult.
It is difficult, yeah.
Or like, no one wants to do the stuff they.
But you know what I mean?
Do.
It's like, I know I've got, maybe some weakness in a certain area, but I haven't done anything about it yet.
So if you read James Clear's book, the
Atomic Habits.
Yeah, he makes it pretty clear how these things are difficult to achieve. So if someone tells you should do something, there's always a fairly simple reason why it feels difficult. And the simplistic one is just like, it's not easy enough for you to go and make it a habit. If you were, I don't know, air quotes, trained from a young age to brush your teeth from a child, and so it becomes habitual because it's something that you do every day when you get up or when you go to bed, and it's ingrained in there. And so when you're starting something new, like even though you have the thought in your head that I should do this, there's not enough stimulus or habit or process to actually make it happen. So there's a whole kind of cascade of things that need to happen. So if you haven't read Atomic Habits, I'd definitely get you to go and read that. But yeah, just making things easy, doing it over again, and actually having some accountability becomes one of the important things. So someone saying, hey, why haven't you done this? Or kind of checking up on you.
I think I've got a slightly more cynical opinion about as to why. Because it's boring, it takes a long time to see results, and it's not riding bikes.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's also one of the things that James talks about. Says, you've got to make things fun. But, why is it not fun? We're talking about kind of doing upper body exercises, right?
So I think it's not fun. Why is it not fun? I think it's not fun because maybe people don't understand or aren't sort of aware of what they can do to improve these areas. And it's just like, I'm just going to do sit-ups. Well, that's a really bad way to train your core. Maybe not knowing what it is that they can actually do to improve this stuff might be the first barrier. And then you just get paralysis of analysis. Yeah. And it's just like, well, I don't know where to start now because I've completed Google. I've read everything there is to know about core training, and I don't know where to start.
But then also, it's like telling people to go to the gym. It's like, go to the gym. Well, when I get to the gym, what do I do?
Sit on Instagram.
Well, but you can do 1,000,000,001 different exercises, can't you? So unless there's specificity and it's easy to do and it's fun, then it's hard to actually get people to do all this kind of stuff. And that's why we do cycling, because it's fun and it's rewarding in that sense.
Do people have quite a limited capacity for fun nowadays? Maybe this is why it's a modern problem.
A limited capacity for fun?
Or limited
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's, again,
I'd frame this another way. I think people have a limited tolerance for boredom.
Well...
Think about that one for a second.
Yeah, or it's linked, isn't it? Because if you're pressed for time, you want to make the most of the time that you've got, and so you'd rather be having fun rather than supposedly doing this kind of should process. And so, why wouldn't I just go out and do the thing that I'm having fun with? But I think this is where the crux of this episode is that when you want to do something fun and it's particularly challenging for your body, then you have to work out what does it take to actually be able to do the fun, and sometimes just doing the fun itself is not enough. Like if you're doing an ultra distance event, or you're doing Ironman, or you want to train yourself into a sprint, then there are specificities around it. And I think the old adage, is pretty much been dispelled of, if you want to be a good cyclist, you used to think you just go out and do loads of cycling, and that will get you so far. But you do have to add some specificity in there. You have to add in some you just have to add in some thought about how best you can actually use your time to achieve your goals. And just doing more and more cycling might not actually be benefiting you.
It's taking an objective and systematic approach to what you need specifically to get to from where you are to where you want to be. And that's literally it. If that's riding your bike more, fantastic.
Yeah.
If that is working on specific areas of weakness within your body,
Yeah.
that is also fantastic too. There's just opportunity everywhere, and it's different for different people.
Yeah.
But there are trends.
Yeah. But perhaps we're kind of being more specific about the audience that we're talking about here as well. As
Yeah.
you know, obviously you need to do like a certain amount of cycling to become a cyclist, and you know, train the cycling specific kind of muscle activation, firing sequences, all the rest of it. And so yeah, if you're starting from zero, just going out and just doing a ton of cycling will get you pretty far. You know.
But there'll be a point where you plateau,
Yeah.
and that's when you need to start looking at things more systematically and more specifically
Yeah.
to see, right, what is it that I need in order to break this plateau that I seem to have found myself on, and then how can I start improving again from there? It's like we were saying before we hit record. You know, you were talking about like, you know, the middle years of your triathlon career where you did more and more and more and just got slower and slower and slower.
Yeah, absolutely. And is, you know, thinking more is more is,
Well, more is better is the kind of the kind of misinformed viewpoint. More is just sometimes more.
yeah.
It's not necessarily better.
So I guess we're getting at cyclists, triathletes, athletes who have got a significant challenge ahead in terms of their goals and their aspirations of what they want to achieve on their bikes. And perhaps, you know, the engines are good, you know, the legs are good, the amount of cycling capacity that you have is good.
Your
But
bike
then,
fit might be good.
yeah, maybe the bike fit's good. But then, you know, what is the limiting factor? And I think this is what we've been seeing recently within the studio, which has spurred this conversation of, you know, I think when I first started bike fitting, pretty much like all the issues were kind of lower body. It was always like knees or feet or hips or something like that. But I feel like maybe recently we've been getting more and more upper body issues, where particularly like back pain, numb hands, shoulder ache, neck ache. And I think the longer you go and the further you go, the harder you go, then the more this kind of focus on making sure that your entire body, so lower body and upper body, can function together and has the capacity to do what you want to do becomes more and more important.
So would you say that that's a problem exclusive to people riding longer distances?
It becomes more prevalent and important for sure. Because quite often, you know, the longer you go, the more you have to sustain this awkward position, which we deem cycling. Like cycling itself puts you into a very unnatural posture.
Yeah,
where you're
fatiguing.
when you're bent forward. What's the stat, Matt? You often say with head.
Oh, it's like every couple of inches your head moves forward, it doubles in weight.
Yeah, that came from a running, I think, study.
Shane Benzie,
Yeah.
The Lost Art of Running.
There you go. I was just looking at forefoot striking versus like heel striking, things like that.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
That is a big
That's
old
very that's very 10, 15 years ago. But, yeah.
But yeah, the same, you know, if you put yourself in a cycling position, which is essentially a bit like a squat, where you're extending your head over your feet, that head is heavy because you're all clever people. So you need to carry that head, and that requires strength in the body to be able to do that. If you stay in that kind of extended position for a very long time, then you're going to need more capacity in your body. And what holds your head up? Well, starting from the head down is your neck, then shoulders, back, lower back, core, hips, feet, all the rest of it. So it all has to work as a system. And if there's a weakness within that system, then you know that strength or that need to hold the head up has to go somewhere else. And you know, we're always looking for the I guess the limiting point within the system. And maybe you're making a big generalization as well if I say that cyclists tend to be cyclists because they don't want to do upper body work. Like, we're leg-based creatures. Like, we wanted to go out and do cycling because it's easier to power through the legs. I don't know, that's a massive generalisation.
Yeah, I think we're kind of drifting a little bit. But I think the point you made about like the system is only as good as its weakest point.
Yeah.
And you spend all this time training our aerobic capacity, like, you know, strengthening, like, you know, our hips, our legs, our kind of like lower body structure. But yeah, sometimes the limiting factor is the upper body, especially as the distances get longer or the demands of the event get more strenuous, shall we say. So, like, you look at a track cyclist, a track sprinter, they are hench from head to toe. They are jacked.
Yeah.
And they are very aware that their upper body plays just as much of an important role in creating and generating that force as their lower body does. And yes, the demands of the event are very different. It's very short, you know, like, you know, they're measuring their rides in seconds, not hours. But the whole system needs to work as one. And yes, the demands change as the events get longer, but the capacity required to sustain a position or to generate force is kind of still there. It's just different. So if you think about, like, going back to your original question, like, what is core? Like, core isn't your six-pack, basically. It's not this six-pack abs, you know, your six-pack's for the fridge. Keep it there. Core is the whole kind of like sling of your kind of upper body round through your kind of abdominals, your obliques, your back, all kind of working together to create stability and generate kind of like essentially the force required not only to generate force through the hips down, but also to stabilize you as you generate that force, usually kind of in opposite planes. So
I tend to think about the core as everything that's not limbs.
yeah, basically, yeah, your trunk, basically, yeah. So, and there's like lots of different ways to train your core, and there's lots of different stresses that your core is kind of being predisposed to when you're riding a bike, regardless of whether it's a mountain bike, a road bike, a time trial bike, a track bike, whatever. The demands are slightly different, but they are generally the same in the way of generating stability and helping generate force.
Yeah, maybe it's good to kind of delve into the distinctions between like kind of those short distance athletes and long distance athletes, and maybe that's where some of the confusion comes into it. Because short distance athletes or sprinters, even if you think about like cycling sprinters and running sprinters, like 100-meter athletes, you know, you look at Usain Bolt, he's stacked. That's because like they need a lot of instantaneous like force production, and that requires a lot of muscle, like mass or bulk, and those fast twitch fibers that go into it. And there's a huge amount of, like, if you think about like a track sprint start, like the amount of power that's initiated through that immediate start gate, you know, just immediate power transfer is like enormous, ridiculous. Which is why they have to, you know, double strap their feet into the pedals so they don't pull out of the pedals. And what are they using to kind of pull themselves forwards? Well, it's their upper body, because the entire body kind of works as a sling or system. So they need that kind of muscle mass in their arms as well as their legs to kind of pull themselves forwards and to control the forces going through the bike and forces that they're creating. Where it gets, I think, a little bit confusing is when you start looking at distance athletes and think about distance runners. They all look like twigs, and, you know, distance cyclists or climbers, you think of them as almost like little jockeys. They're much smaller in stature and leaner, but the strength is still there. Like, I remember reading an interview with like Mo Farah and talking about, you know, his training regime, and he was doing like kind of 100-kilo deadlifts and so on. Like, you know, he had to have enough power and strength through the gym work to enable him to sustain his speed through his endurance events. And you don't have to have huge amounts of muscle mass to be strong. Endurance athletes have what we call strength endurance, like your ability to hold positions and form and posture for a great deal of time, and it's as much neuromuscular, so training that kind of muscle system to hold positions, as it is just about what kind of muscle fiber itself, or just the muscle mass. So when we talk about strength, it doesn't mean just going into the gym and getting jacked.
But I think that's a modern problem as well. It's like our misconceptions of strength. You know, because we get fed this image or ideal of what certain things look like. So you want to ride a bike up hills quickly, you need to look a certain way, be a certain way, that kind of thing. Or if you want to lift weights, you need to look a certain way, eat certain things, that kind of thing. In reality, it's all far more nuanced. And I feel
like it is changing though. Like the amount of on our questionnaires that we see, like we see far more people putting on the questionnaire. So we ask what other sports and what other exercise you're doing, and they say, "Oh, I'm doing some strength work." But then the question is like,
what are you doing?
Strength work are you doing? Like, is that effective? Is that, as I was saying earlier, you can go to the gym and do 1,000,000,001 different exercises, but what is actually going to make a difference for you, and how do you identify that? So,
pushing loads of weight is very different from being stable. Being a stable person.
Yeah, you look at endurance athletes training in the gym, and it's a completely different set of exercises to the bodybuilder who's focusing in on one little muscle and trying to make that as big as possible.
Or even if you ever see those videos where it's like climber destroys bodybuilder in the gym, like a rock climber. Because they have so much of that endurance, strength and stability.
Finger strength.
Or even like back strength and core strength as well. Ultimately.
But ultimately, it's control. Strength is there to be able to control force. I think that's where we kind of need to bring it back to. It's like, can you control the force? And it sounds very Star Wars, doesn't it? But can you control the forces that you're trying to create and deliver through, in our case, the bike? And can you stabilise yourself in this unnatural position for the duration of your event? That's essentially the requirement. And I think if we frame it like that, then it gives a whole new kind of meaning to the word strength training.
I think it's such a general word. Actually, one of your favourite phrases is you can't fire a cannon from a canoe.
You cannot fire a cannon from a canoe. It will not end well. That's right.
But there's a great analogy of, if your legs are like super strong, you can generate a lot of force on the bike. But you've got a weaker, relatively weaker upper body, then, you're not going to be able to control the rest of the body that has to stabilise against the force that you're creating.
And then the bike becomes a crutch, and that's where problems can occur.
Or you end up having to work a lot harder through the upper body just to be able to stay on the bike. And then you have to start bracing through your joints, and so you just don't have the capacity to kind of hold the position without really compensating and creating a lot of discomfort. So if you are having some pain and discomfort, and you find that on your rides, the limiting factor is always like neck pain or hand numbness or I don't know, anything else related to your upper body, your shoulders, maybe have a think about your capacity. Have you actually done anything to improve that capacity? You've probably been cycling a lot. You've been improving the durability and capacity of your lungs and your legs, but the upper body is having to work twice as hard if you've increased that kind of leg capacity. So, what could you be doing? And certainly there are different ways of going about creating that strength. Going and lifting heavy weights could be one way. Doing body weight exercises could be another way. But you need to figure out, what is the limiting factor, and then what could you be doing about it?
So I think rather than thinking about it in kind of like specifics, such as lifting weight or body weight, I think maybe we kind of need to reframe how we think about training the upper body for the demands of what it is that we're trying to do. So in my mind, which is a scary place, core training, and I use that word in air quotes, there's essentially 3 demands, I think, in a bike riding context that the core has to go through. One is rotational. There's like a rotational demand. So can you control the rotation of the body in that environment? At the same time, there's an anti-rotational element as well. So as one side rotates into one direction, there's an anti-rotational need on the opposite side of the body. And then the third element is isometric capability. So I'm thinking like time trial bikes. You know,
just holding your
body
gravity.
against gravity in a certain position. So rather than thinking about it as body weight versus weighted or whatever, think of it as the demands of the body in the context that you're training for, and then working out how best you can train those elements to make sure that you are strong enough to deal with the demands of what you're trying to do.
I guess like a really simple way of thinking about it would be like if you were doing a plank in the gym.
Which is an isometric.
But then you had to lift one leg up or kind of bend one leg, almost imagine you were kind of pushing something behind you or something like that. So then that puts more demand on the rest of the system. If you can't lift that leg or move that or kind of one leg without the rest of your body kind of toppling over and kind of wiggling or kind of losing its form or posture, then that's an opportunity to kind of work on that stability and strength so that you can kind of move that kind of one leg.
A really good, like bird dog.
Bird dog
would be a really classic example of that. You know, if you start to fall over when you try and do that pose, then maybe there's an opportunity.
And remember, cycling is a highly repetitive activity. You know, you're doing over 10,000 pedal strokes an hour. So if you try and do some of these exercises in the gym and you find that you're failing after like kind of 10 reps, then, you know, could you expect to sustain it for, you know, another 10,000? Like 10,000?
Without some sort of pain.
Exactly.
Because that's when the bike becomes the crutch, right? When it's hard to sustain it without the bike taking some of that.
You have to kind of lean into the bike rather than using the bike as a tool to go faster. So.
But then there's also a postural element to all this as well, in terms of things like internal, external rotation through your shoulders and what that does to your back, and, you know, creating stability that way as well, or helping to contribute to stability by creating the right shapes and being able to hold the right shapes through things like, you know, internal or external rotation of the shoulders, and what modern society predisposes us to in this kind of more sedentary existence that we seem to find ourselves in.
I tend to think about posture as the ability to like hold a strong shape with your body, like where your body is able to generate good force or good power, and that includes like holding postures that allow you to breathe well, to get oxygen to your lungs, to enable digestion. So if you're on a triathlon bike, does your posture kind of allow enough room for your digestive system to actually work? Case study with old Colin Norris.
Yeah, go read that on. Is that on our website?
Yeah, you wrote an article about how bike position can affect digestion. But that was all affected through posture. So, you know, the bike was forcing his body into a posture that was wreaking havoc with his digestive system. So, you know, you resolve that and suddenly then you have more capacity. You can eat more, you can get more energy, and you can generate more power. You can sustain that effort for longer. And so, being able to find, first of all, a good posture to be in, to generate good power and sustain. Generate good power and force on the bike, and then you've got to figure out how to sustain it. So that's where the strength work comes in. obviously you need the bike fit to figure out the position, but then you need to train into it. You need to train the body to hold the position.
Yeah, the bike fit isn't the silver bullet. It creates the environment for good movement to be created.
Yeah, and I think that's why bike fit is a process. You know, we've said it over and over again, but you know, like the bike fit is just the beginning, the access point to creating great performance and comfort and so on. So yeah, where does this leave us then? Yeah, I think people just need to look at themselves and kind of take a little bit of an honest look, as we were talking about in previous episodes, about kind of honesty in there. And just like bike fitting, you can do a lot yourself, but at some point, maybe when you get to a point where you're struggling a little bit, maybe it's good to consult an expert. And the same applies to working with the body. Find a body practitioner, maybe a strength and conditioning coach, or a coach who understands the demands of your sport and can work with you and give you that objective view as to kind of what your body is actually doing. Because it's really hard to objectively look at yourself. Well, obviously not, because it's all subjective, but you know, having the ability to have someone else look at you and suggest and be like, hey, maybe you could work on this, or you could work on that, try this out, and just go on that journey of trying different things out and not being afraid to work on the upper body.
And I think as well, if you've not trained this facet of your body before, just start super simple.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it, and just aim for, like you were saying at the beginning, making it a habit. And then you will see that the progress comes kind of naturally. As you become more and more consistent. The capacity of your body will increase, therefore you can do more and more fun stuff. But you have to get to that point first. And even just making it a habit of, you know, doing maybe 2 or 3 exercises every other day. Doesn't have to be like, you know the world's greatest workout. But if you're covering off one of those 3 elements with for 10 minutes every time you go and do this stuff, the rotational, anti-rotational and isometric element, you stack that for 6 or 8 weeks, you're probably going to start to see some progress, and then you can start to take further steps to do more elaborate or fun, whatever you want to call it, kind of stuff. So start small, make it a habit, and once the habit's been ingrained, then you'll start to see some stuff.
And I think it's just for general living.
For sure.
Working on this kind of stuff, like looking at the whole of your body, is, you know, it can only be beneficial.
There's a reason there's an exercise called the farmer's carry. We don't really do that anymore. You know, we all get our shopping delivered. None of us have to carry it anywhere. You know. So just kind of. And just see what you can do.
Bring it back to the discussion about using pro cyclists as a point of emulation. Then, you know, they are so specific. They're a very specific creature for a specific task, and you don't actually know what they're feeling when they're out there. You know, when they get back to their hotel, you know, why are they having massages every night? Are they in bits because they're, you know, in poor postures or not? We just don't know. So, you know, just assuming that what the pros do is the best, it's not always, it's not an easy path to kind of follow. And even looking at like the entire pro peloton, like if you just look at it, there's so much variety in kind of body shapes and postures and muscle bulk and all the rest of it that, our advice is to always focus on the individual. Focus on yourself, like try and identify what you need, and that way you'll get to where you want to. Just, you know, understanding your own goals, and try and apply it to a holistic view on your body. So work that upper body.
It's discipline, isn't it? Human nature. It's not easy.
Sometimes we need to do a little bit of what we don't want to do to get to where we want to do.
You have to look past the end of your nose. You know, like doing the core work enables you to have more fun on the bike.
Yeah.
But
what have we been doing then that we need to do that maybe isn't as fun as riding bikes in order to help us riding bikes? Have we been doing any of that? I've started going back to the gym.
Yeah, I'm always in the gym.
me too.
Always in the gym.
Always.
Well,
But actually, I have, on this theme, I have actually started adding more and more upper body stuff into my gym work.
Yeah.
Such as,
So, this is super boring, but yeah, I'll go into it. So, the 3 elements of core training that we were just kind of discussing. So, I will hit at least 1 exercise, usually 2, covering off those 3 elements of rotation, anti-rotation, and isometric. Then I've started doing a lot of stuff for my back. Now, I've got a gangly back anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if like the story got out on the podcast that I had a bit of an episode before Christmas where mid-fit I had to have a bit of a lie down and my back went, and it took me 2.5 hours to get home. So I've been doing a lot of stuff to help strengthen my back, a lot of like hinge-based kind of row movements. So my favourite one at the moment is like a gorilla row with a kettlebell, which is super hard to do well, but it hits a lot of stuff. So it's like a hinge and a row. So I'm getting glutes, I'm getting hamstrings, I'm getting like, lats, I'm getting all kinds of like stuff. I'm getting like, core, abdominals. That's really good. Really good bang for your buck exercise.
Yeah.
I'm learning pull-ups. So I'm not actually doing any pull-ups at the moment, but I'm basically doing like some dead hangs and then like shoulder, like kind of like, just
Shoulder
pulls just like that from my shoulders.
Yeah.
So, because I'm still quite weak, I don't want to go full gas into a pull-up and smash a rotator cuff or something or tear something I shouldn't. So doing a bit of that, like trying to work up to doing like an assisted pull-up. And then got back into press-ups. But lots of different stance widths and hand positions. So wide grip, standard, like military press, and then some diamond grip as well, some diamond press. So really close in, like hands under your chest. And then that's usually me toast. And then I start on my legs. But yeah, like basically because I tend to run more than I ride a bike these days, like making sure that arm carriage and that arm swing is good, and I can like open up my chest and my shoulders and create that kind of nice extended externally rotated position. I found that helps quite a lot.
I think when I was training into triathlon, like the thing that helped me most with my swimming was actually kind of upper back kind of pulling work.
I used to swim with massive paddles.
Yeah.
They were literally as big as my face. Yeah. And that really helped.
Yeah. But interestingly, it was not because it was just to like kind of pull force through the water, but it was to take me out of my kind of forward shoulder rounded cyclist position that I'd trained myself into for so many years, and now I suddenly had to use my upper body to kind of swim. But I had to change the posture and kind of open out my chest and so on, and so just lots of pulling work, which you never get to do when you're on the bike. You're kind of always braced and rounded forward, and it's really easy to get into that basically like desk-like position that we all do. And that just continues like now. I think when when you're a parent as well, you end up picking up kids a lot, and so actually upper body work becomes like
just
really
like
important.
Overhead pressing your child.
Just like picking like farmer carries that are amazing, like or just carrying heavy stuff all the time. It's usually actually carrying stuff whilst you're carrying your kid at the same time and doing it on one side, and you're like, oh my god, I got to make the bus, got to run for the bus, but I've got my shopping and my kid, and just being able to do those kind of tasks without like, I don't know, popping a disc.
But I think
a win.
I think the one thing I have learned starting to do more and more upper body stuff is that you need to drop the ego. You cannot go like hooning into this full gas, otherwise you are going to do yourself a right mischief. And like basically my philosophy on gym is if you injure yourself in the gym, you're a fool, because that's supposed to be complementing what you're doing. rather than being the goal in and of itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's worth mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the gym the other day and someone was trying to do a pole dance and trying to do the old human flag.
You got to be strong as to do that.
They weren't strong enough to do that. That was quite
I did have a good one though. Was there's like a weird calf raise kind of machine thing in my gym, and one of the bros, who was like literally not trained legs in his life, had done way loads of upper body stuff.
Yeah.
He wanted to jump in and sort of rotate, and I think that's a very kind of like kind of normal thing to do in the gym.
Yeah, you would share equipment.
Share the equipment, yeah. And but he didn't bother changing the weight, so he just jumped on and was doing his thing, his calf raises. I think he did about 12, and I was like, his calves are going to pop again. And and he was doing what I was doing on a single leg. And that was quite a good ego boost. I quite enjoyed that. So you get those little wins. But and then he went and did some sort of ridiculous shoulder press. It was like twice my body weight, and I was like, I can't do that. It's all part of the puzzle.
But even young Matt, you were talking about your run training and just doing stability work like before and after as well, and just like the coach making you do that.
Yeah.
And I guess has that made a difference to kind of how you train or kind of how you feel about your running?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, to be honest, being in the gym's probably made the most difference.
How's the work on your feet going?
It's going.
Been to the physio?
Yeah, I got a little band around my bed leg. Just hop up and do a bit of resisted balance stuff.
Nice. There you go.
But that's it. You're making it easy because the
Yeah.
band is there. So when you walk past it, it's super easy.
Yeah.
If you have to get this whole palaver out every time you want to do something, that doesn't make it easy. So if you just leave stuff lying around the house, you're more likely to do it as you walk past.
Yeah. Hopefully not with the young children running around. But yeah.
No.
But I don't love it. I don't love going to the gym. But I think I've just got to the point where it's a necessary evil in order to do what I do love.
Yeah, it's a part of the process, isn't it? And as we age, that component becomes more and more important because our ability to recover and sustain these postures and build muscle mass or even just maintain muscle mass becomes more difficult as we get older. Like, I mean, you're still the right end of 30. We're pushing the wrong end of 40. Like, it's different, and you have to adapt your training based on, your body's kind of like state as it ages. So, what we could do in our mid 20s, ain't got a chance of doing that now. Yeah. So the training just looks different depending on kind of what stage you're at in life.
Yeah.
Like if you're comparing yourself to a World Tour pro in their early 20s and you're in your mid 50s, then you're just setting yourself up for an absolute car crash.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you were saying, where it's just being objective, realistic, honest with yourself. It's like, right, where do I want to be? Where am I? And what are the steps to get there?
Yeah. And actually that just reminded me of, another good point about using experts like physios. Like you've been to see the physio, Matt, and you've got the exercises, but you're doing the exercises.
Yeah.
But you are, aren't you?
Yeah. But also there's integration of applying the strength work into your training where, before your runs, then there are run drills. There's stability work to stimulate the body to start working in a certain kind of way, and so on. And so, I guess you have to look at training and what you do as a complete system as well. Quite often, we see people coming in with having an injury or having had an injury, and they've been to the physio, they've got some work done, but then they've stopped it. They've just stopped doing it. And it's like, well, I go to the physio to get fixed. Well, yes, they got you out of that chronic state, but you still got to keep going.
Well, it's understanding why you're doing those things. Even if the physio has told you to do them, it's understanding why you're doing it.
Yeah, why you're doing it.
As opposed to just outsourcing the problem.
Yeah.
It's, I think there's a lot of people who, again, if we take running, it's like they'll open and close the gate before they run, and
but they don't know why.
But they don't know why, and they'll stretch their quads or their hamstrings after their run. But again, it's like,
why are we doing it? Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to get people to think about. Because the people that listen to this podcast are committed cyclists. You know, they want to be doing challenging things. They want to be pushing their bodies. They want to be performing at their best. They want to be comfortable on long rides and so on. And so, you know, if you want all of that, then you have to understand all those whys and, you know, really dig into it. You know, you can only get away with, just going out and blatting out 100 miles every so often, you know, up to a certain point before your body starts complaining, and just understanding why is, you know, all part of that, and then actioning it. So, you know, get some work in there, guys. Work that upper body, and if you're unsure how to do it, then look to some experts. You know, ChatGPT. My goodness. Like our favourite is to kind of our friends at Strength for Endurance. You know, the the clues in the name and their title. So yeah, they do a free consultation if you give them a call. So yeah, go check them out if you're kind of interested in strength training. Go seek out Chris and his team at Strength for Endurance. But yeah, hopefully that's been a useful one for you again, and thanks for listening. If you've listened through the whole of our series,
well done.
Well done. Yeah, we like to ramble on a little bit, but yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts, and yeah, if you've got any other topics for us to kind of discuss and dissect in and around cycling and endurance sports and bike fit, then yeah, give us a shout. But until then, let's keep on riding, and let's get strong. All right, take care, guys. See you in the next one. If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Way or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time, keep on spinning.